Hello students, it's Professor Capko again. It's time to learn to be a great evaluator. A lot of you see problems on your algebra tests or homework that say evaluate this, evaluate that. Let's talk about that. That is just telling you that you need to assign a value to. So an example of that would be a problem like this. Evaluate for a is equal to 2, b is equal to 3, c is equal to -1, where parentheses a plus b multiplied by parentheses a minus c, close parentheses, multiplied by parentheses c plus b, close parentheses. And I want to know the value of that. All we're doing to find the value is to plug in the numbers that you've been given. My recommendation to you is that you use boxes as placeholders. So first I'm going to pull out the A, I'm going to put an empty box there, and I'm going to label it A. Add to it another empty box that used to contain a B. So I put the B there and I list it. Close the parentheses. Next, I have an open parentheses. I have another box here. I'm just bringing everything down. This was an A in there, so I'm going to label it so I know what came out of that box. And I'm going to subtract from it another box here that's labeled C. And then lastly, I have another box, C plus B. Now I've labeled all my boxes. Now all I need to do is go ahead and fill it in with what the numbers I've been given up here. So in this case, A is equal to 2. So anywhere there is an A, I can put in a 2. There's no other A's. Anywhere there's a B, I can put a 3. So I put that in those boxes. And anywhere there's a C, I put in a -1, because that's what it tells me. Now here's where you're going to see that the boxes come in handy. First of all, let's go ahead and calculate what's within the parentheses, because dear Aunt Sally tells us to do what's in the parentheses first. So I have a 2 plus a 3, that's a 5. So inside this first set of parentheses is a 5. In the next one, I've got a 2, and I'm subtracting a -1. I've got a 2, and I'm subtracting a -1. This is where the boxes come in handy, because students oftentimes forget that minus, and they knew it was a -1, so they just go 2 minus 1, which is not the same thing as 2 minus a -1. This is like a double negative in English. If I were to tell you to don't not go to class, what am I telling you? I'm telling you to go to class. So the double negative turns something positive. So just take that double negative and turn it into a positive like that. I've got 2 plus 1 is 3. Close off that parentheses. I've got a -1, and I'm adding to it 3. So I'm starting out with a -1. So it's as if you had a bank balance in your bank and you're overdrawn by $1. And you go to the bank and you add $3 to it. How much would you wind up in the bank at that point? $2. So you have a positive 2. Now all that's left to do is the multiplication, because everything inside the parentheses has been done, and the parentheses right next to each other tells us to multiply. So 5 times 3 is 15, so I can put that in parentheses, and I've got over here 2 in parentheses. So now I'm at 2 times 15. 2 times 15 is 30. There's nothing left to do, so 30 is our answer. So the value of this for those numbers is 30. Let's do some more like that. Let's say you have a problem that looks like this. It says evaluate when x equals 1, y equals -3, and z equals 1/2. Oh, the dreaded fractions. Let's see what we can do. And in this case, we're evaluating the equation, where we've got 2 times x. 2x is the 2 is the coefficient, x is the variable, so it's 2 times x, and I'm subtracting from that 3 times y, 3y. So I'm going to do the same method. I'm going to put my 2 here, and right next to it I'm going to have an empty box, label my box in x, bring down my minus, and then put in my 3, and I have an empty box where I had a variable, and the variable was y. So all that we need to do is plug. We plug and chug. So in my x box, x equals 1, so I'm going to put a 1 there. In my y box, my y is equal to -3, so I'm going to put a -3 there. And luckily, in this problem, we don't have to deal with the fraction. That'll be coming at another time in another video. So these are right next to each other, so we're going to multiply. We have multiplication and we have subtraction. We know that dear Aunt Sally tells us to multiply before we divide. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go ahead and watch my video dealing with order of operations, and that'll help you, and it'll be a little refresher. So 2 times 1, we're going to multiply first. 2 times 1 is 2. And then I've got negative 3, times negative 3. A negative times a negative is always a positive. If the signs are the same and you're multiplying, it's going to wind up a positive result. 3 times 3 is 9. So I've got 2 plus 9. 2 plus 9 is 11, and that's our value. Go ahead and circle your answer. Let's do one more like this. Evaluate where x is 1, y is negative 3, and z is 1/2. In this case, we've got 2 parentheses x minus 2y, close parentheses. All right? Just because we have the parentheses, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fill in 2 parentheses. In my parentheses, I pull out the x, and I put a box there, label it x. Subtract 2, pull out my y, leave an empty box there, label it y, close parentheses. So now that I've made the boxes, all I need to do is plug. In my x box, x is equal to 1, so I'm going to plug my 1 there. In my y box, y is equal to negative 3, so I'm going to place that in there. Okay, so let's deal with what's inside the parentheses first. So I'm going to bring this down 2 times whatever's in the parentheses. I've got multiplication, I have subtraction. Dear Aunt Sally tells us to multiply first. So I've got a negative 2. I've got a negative 2 times a negative 3. If the signs are the same, you're going to get when you're multiplying, you're going to get a positive result. So 2 times 3 is a positive 6. I bring down my 1, close off the parentheses. So then I've got 1 plus 6 is 7. Bring down my 2. So 6 plus 1 is 7, multiplied by 2. 2 times 7 is 14. And that's the answer to that problem. Hopefully you're following along with this. Let's do one bonus one. You're all doing so well. How about this one? Evaluate. And this one we've got some exponents involved. Let's see how to deal with this. I've got 3x to the 5th power y z squared. I'm going to do the same procedure. If you notice, I've developed a procedure and I do the same thing for each time. That's where my x was, so I'm going to label it x, and I know this is to the 5th power. I've got a box next to it. That's the y box. That's empty. And then finally, I've got my z box. Label it z, and that one's squared. So now I plug in the variables. For my x, I have 1. For my y, I have negative 3. And for my z, I have 1/2. Now let's go ahead and evaluate with the exponents. Okay, because dear Aunt Sally says deal with that first. So 1 to the 5th power, well, that's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, 5 times. That's still 1. So this is 1. So I've got 3 times 1. I've got a negative 3 here. I didn't do anything to that, so I'm just going to bring it down. And I got 1/2 squared. So that's the equivalent of 1/2 times 1/2. That's what squaring does. When we're multiplying fractions, the dreaded fractions, we don't need a common denominator. We just multiply straight across. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So the answer to that part is 1/4. Now let's finish our multiplication. We got 3 times 1 is 3. And then 3 times negative 3. So we're going to get a positive times a negative is a negative. 3 times 3 is negative 9. And that's all times 1/4, or all over 4. So negative 9/4 is the answer to that one. So hopefully you find these helpful. If you have a question, go ahead and post it in the comments, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. If you got a particular problem you want done, put it in there, and I can try and solve it for you, make a video of it. If you like this video, go ahead and make sure you click like, share it with your friends, your classmates, and make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time, and hope you're learning a lot. Goodbye.